There is a mystery, a revelation unfolding before our eyes, a pattern woven into the fabric of time, and if we dare to look, we will see it. Nations rise, empires fall, and men of power come and go, but one truth remains: nothing happens by chance. Imagine a man, mighty, untouchable, a ruler among rulers. The world watches as he ascends, confident, unstoppable, almost invincible. Yet behind the scenes, unseen by the world, there is another force at work, a force greater than any man, any power, or any throne. This force sets up kings and removes them. It humbles the proud and exalts the humble. History bears witness. The Babylonian king who boasted of his greatness was driven from his throne to live among the beasts. The Roman emperor who declared himself a god met a fate unbefitting his title. Great leaders who once held the world in their hands, brought low, removed from power, not by human hands, but by a divine decree. And so it is today. The world may be shocked when a leader, seemingly immovable, is suddenly removed. The headlines may speculate, analysts may debate, but the truth is far deeper. What if what we see is not just the collapse of human power, but the hand of God intervening? What if the very rise to power was part of a divine purpose, and the fall a judgment? Many put their hope in leaders, movements, ideologies, and yet, time after time, they are proven fallible. But there is one who never changes, who reigns above all earthly power. When the time comes, no wealth, no army, no influence can stand in his way. The removal is sudden, swift, and irreversible. You see, when a leader's heart becomes hardened, when power corrupts absolutely, the judgment does not delay. What once appeared permanent is gone in an instant, and what remains a lesson, a call to remember who truly governs the affairs of men. We stand at a critical moment, a time when the world is watching, questioning, searching for answers. Many will ask why it happened. The wise will look beyond the visible and see the invisible hand at work, correcting, realigning, humbling. Take this as a warning, as a reminder, and as a wake-up call. We are not in control. We are not the masters of destiny. No matter how high one may rise, there is one higher still, and when he acts, it is undeniable. So, in the face of shock and confusion, do not fear. Instead, seek wisdom, seek understanding, and most importantly, seek the one who never loses his throne. The rise and fall of leaders are part of a greater story, a story where justice, mercy, and truth will ultimately prevail. Remember this truth, for it will guide you when the world is shaken. There is a purpose behind every removal, and there is a plan beyond our understanding. Trust not in man, but in the one who holds the hearts of kings in his hands. Divine sovereignty over power. No leader, no matter how powerful, can maintain their position without the divine will. History shows that even the greatest rulers are humbled by God. Pattern of judgment throughout history. Leaders who become proud and corrupt are often suddenly removed from power as a form of divine correction. Spiritual insight beyond headlines. While the world may see only a political or social upheaval, spiritual wisdom reveals a deeper truth: God's intervention in human affairs. A call for humility. The speech serves as a warning against pride and a reminder that all human power is temporary, subject to the higher authority of God. Hope in divine justice. Even in times of chaos or shocking events, faith in God's ultimate justice and purpose should bring peace and understanding. Would you like me to add these 5 key points as an introduction in the speech itself? Divine sovereignty over power, the ultimate authority behind human leadership throughout the ages. Humans have witnessed the rise and fall of leaders, emperors, kings, and rulers, individuals who at one point seemed invincible, unstoppable, and firmly rooted in their positions of power. Yet history reveals a profound truth. No leader, regardless of their might or influence, can maintain their authority without the divine will. This reality challenges the perception that human ambition and power alone shape the course of history. Instead, it underscores the fundamental principle that behind every throne and every title there exists a higher, sovereign power that governs the affairs of humanity. Imagine the grandeur of ancient empires, the Babylonian kingdom under Nebuchadnezzar, the vast Roman Empire under Caesar, or even the mighty pharaohs of Egypt who saw themselves as deities on earth. These leaders commanded immense wealth, armies, and influence. Their words determined the fate of nations, and their decrees shaped the lives of millions. Yet, despite their apparent supremacy, each one eventually faced the humbling reality of divine intervention. One of the most striking examples is that of King Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of Babylon. At the height of his power, he looked upon his vast kingdom with pride, declaring, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built by my mighty power?" Yet, even as the words left his lips, a voice from heaven proclaimed his downfall. Stripped of his authority, the mighty king was driven away to live among the animals, eating grass like an ox. For 7 years, his sanity left him until he acknowledged that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. Only then was his position restored. This account is not an isolated incident, but a recurring theme throughout history. Leaders who exalted themselves, believing their power to be absolute, ultimately faced consequences that revealed their vulnerability. The Roman emperors, often worshipped as gods, met untimely deaths or fell from grace. Even in more recent history, political figures who appeared undefeatable were suddenly removed from power, leaving the world stunned. These events reveal a pattern that transcends human understanding. While some attribute these removals to political conspiracies, social movements, or personal failures, there is an undeniable spiritual dimension that often goes overlooked. Leaders may rise through strategy, charisma, or sheer force, but their continued dominance is not guaranteed. When arrogance takes root and the responsibility to lead justly is abandoned, the divine hand intervenes, reminding humanity that no position of authority is permanent. The concept of divine sovereignty over power challenges the modern mindset that often glorifies human achievement while dismissing spiritual accountability. It calls us to recognize that power is not merely earned or seized, it is entrusted for a purpose. When leaders fail to honor that purpose, when they become self-serving rather than serving the greater good, they set themselves on a path toward inevitable downfall. This truth should prompt both leaders and followers to reflect on the source of authority. Those who govern should do so with humility, knowing that their power is conditional, not absolute. They should act with justice, mercy, and integrity, understanding that their leadership is a stewardship rather than an entitlement. As for the people, they must avoid placing ultimate trust in human leaders, remembering that the ultimate authority rests not with men, but with the Creator who ordains and dethrones. Therefore, when we witness a sudden and shocking removal from power, let us look beyond human explanations and consider the possibility of divine intervention. Let us recognize the pattern where pride precedes a fall, where arrogance leads to downfall, and where no human leader can ultimately withstand the will of God. In this realization, we find a profound sense of order, a reassurance that no matter how chaotic the world may appear, there is a higher purpose at work, one that humbles the mighty and exalts the lowly. In the end, the principle remains clear. The sovereignty of God over power is an unchanging truth. Leaders may rise and fall, but divine justice endures, reminding us that the ultimate authority is not seated on any earthly throne, but in the hands of the one who reigns forever. Pattern of judgment, divine correction in the rise and fall of leaders' history is not just a collection of events. It is a mirror reflecting a profound spiritual truth. The rise and fall of leaders often follow a divine pattern, a pattern of judgment. This is not mere coincidence, but a consistent revelation that when leaders become proud, corrupt, and defiant against the principles of righteousness, they are often brought down with sudden, shocking swiftness. What may appear to be political turmoil, social upheaval, or personal failure is in reality a manifestation of a higher judgment, a divine correction that rebalances justice and humbles the proud. The ancient scriptures speak of this pattern clearly. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. But this is not just a proverb, it is a principle that has played out across empires, kingdoms, and nations. We see it in the towering arrogance of the Pharaoh of Egypt, who in his pride defied the command to free an oppressed people. His heart hardened, he witnessed his mighty nation crumble under a series of divine plagues, and finally his army drowned beneath the waters of the Red Sea. Look further, and the pattern becomes even more evident. King Belshazzar of Babylon, drunk with pride and arrogance, mocked the sacred things of God. He feasted with the golden vessels taken from the temple of Jerusalem, dishonoring what was holy. But in the midst of his revelry, a mysterious hand wrote on the wall the words of judgment. That very night, the kingdom was taken from him. A ruler who seemed secure in his power was removed in an instant. The same pattern appears in the story of Herod Agrippa, the ruler who accepted the praise of the people, allowing them to call him a god. He basked in the glory meant for the divine, but as the crowd's adoration grew, judgment came swiftly. He was struck down, consumed by worms, a shocking reminder of the frailty of human pride. But this is not just ancient history. In the modern world, we see leaders who, intoxicated by power, abandon justice, oppress their people, and turn a deaf ear to the cries of the weak. They build empires on the foundations of corruption, their names celebrated, their influence seemingly unshakable. Yet, almost without warning, they are brought low. Political scandals, sudden revolutions, exposure of hidden crimes, these are but the visible means by which the invisible hand of divine judgment acts. The fall of corrupt leaders is not a random occurrence. It is a reflection of a moral law at work in the universe. When those entrusted with power abuse it, when they elevate themselves above truth, and when they turn their hearts against righteousness, they set themselves on a path to destruction. Their fall may be delayed, but it is never denied. Why does this pattern of judgment exist? Because leadership is a sacred responsibility. Those who rule are meant to serve, to act justly, and to lead with humility. When they fail to do so, they trigger a divine correction. It is a reminder that power is not an entitlement but a trust, one that can be withdrawn at any moment. And this truth is not just for kings and presidents. It is for all of us. Whether we lead a nation, a community, or our own households, the principle remains: pride precedes a fall, and corruption invites correction. We must therefore live with humility, remembering that we are accountable to a higher authority. So, when we witness the sudden downfall of a once mighty leader, let us not be confused or merely shocked. Let us understand that we are witnessing the unfolding of an ancient, unchanging pattern, a divine correction that serves as a warning to all. For in every rise and fall there is a message, a call to recognize the sovereignty of God and the moral law that governs all human authority, spiritual insight beyond headlines, unveiling the divine hand in human events in a world saturated with breaking news, endless commentary, and instant analysis. It is easy to become captivated by the surface of events, political shifts, social upheavals, sudden removals of leaders. These are often explained away by pundits as the results of strategies, conspiracies, public discontent, or chance. But there is a deeper reality that escapes the gaze of the masses, a spiritual dimension where the true forces at work are far beyond human calculation. Beneath the chaos of headlines lies a divine narrative, a revelation that God is actively involved in the affairs of humanity. To see beyond the headlines is to possess spiritual insight. It is to understand that while men may boast of their plans, while nations may rise and fall by the will of generals and politicians, there exists a higher throne, a sovereign hand guiding the course of history. It is this divine intervention that turns the seemingly random events of the world into a coherent story with purpose, justice, and truth. Consider the case of ancient Babylon, a city that appeared indestructible, ruled by the mighty King Belshazzar. To the people of that empire, the king's power seemed unshakable. Yet on a night of feasting and pride, a mysterious hand wrote on the wall the words of judgment, Min, Min, Tekel, Upharsin. The king's advisers and wise men could not understand the writing, for they saw only with human eyes, but the prophet Daniel, with spiritual insight, declared the divine verdict: the king's reign was at an end. That very night Babylon fell, and Belshazzar was slain. History is filled with such moments, times when the surface events are merely shadows of a greater spiritual reality. During the time of ancient Israel, the prophet Elijah confronted King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, rulers who seemed secure in their tyranny. But while their power appeared absolute, Elijah saw the truth. They had defied the divine will, and their downfall was inevitable. The drought that struck the land, the defeat at Mount Carmel, and the tragic end of their rule were not random misfortunes. They were divine judgments. Even in modern times, there are events that shock the world. Leaders suddenly exposed, regimes unexpectedly overthrown, the collapse of seemingly invincible systems. The world may attribute these to political miscalculations, betrayals, or revolutions. But to those with spiritual insight, there is often a divine purpose behind the chaos. When a leader who oppresses the weak falls, when a government rooted in corruption crumbles, when a movement built on falsehood is exposed, it is often a sign of divine intervention. But how does one gain this spiritual insight? It begins with understanding that human wisdom is limited, that the physical world is only part of a greater reality. It requires humility, the willingness to look beyond appearances, to listen for the voice of divine truth, and to seek wisdom from the sacred. Those who are spiritually awake recognize that the rise and fall of leaders, the victories and defeats of nations, and the turning points of history are not just the results of human ambition, but the unfolding of a divine plan. This understanding does not produce fear but peace, for it reveals that even in the midst of chaos there is a purpose. When the world trembles, when kingdoms are shaken, those with spiritual insight are not confused. They see the hand of God realigning, correcting, and restoring. They understand that even in judgment there is mercy, and even in chaos there is a call to repentance and truth. So, when the next headline captures the world's attention, when another leader is suddenly removed, another nation is plunged into crisis, or another movement is exposed, not merely look at the surface, seek the deeper truth, ask, what is the divine message in this event? For those who have spiritual insight, the headlines are not just reports of human affairs, but glimpses into the unfolding will of God, a call for humility, recognizing the frailty of human power in a world where ambition is celebrated, where success is measured by titles, wealth, and influence. Humility is often seen as weakness. Yet, throughout history, the greatest falls have come not to the humble, but to the proud, to those who forgot that all human power is temporary, a fleeting shadow in the vast timeline of eternity. The speech you have heard is not merely a reflection on past events. It is a warning, a call for humility, a reminder that all human authority is subject to a higher power. Pride is the oldest and most destructive of all human vices. It was pride that led to the rebellion of Lucifer, the most exalted of angels, who desired to be like God and fell like lightning from heaven. It was pride that led Adam and Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit, believing they could attain wisdom apart from divine guidance. And it is pride that has brought down kings, emperors, and leaders throughout the ages, men and women who saw themselves as invincible, beyond Accountability, untouchable. Consider the ancient king Nebuchadnezzar, who walked upon the walls of Babylon, gazing at the grandeur of the city he had built. Is this not great Babylon that I have built by my mighty power? He declared, his heart swollen with pride. But even as the words left his lips, a voice from heaven spoke. His kingdom would be taken from him, and he would be driven to live among the beasts until he learned that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. For 7 years, this once proud king was humbled until he lifted his eyes to heaven and acknowledged the true source of power. The story of Nebuchadnezzar is not an isolated incident, but a divine pattern, a revelation of what happens when pride replaces humility and self-exaltation replaces reverence for God. History is filled with similar accounts. Pharaoh of Egypt, who boasted of his divine status, saw his army drown in the Red Sea. King Herod, who accepted the praise of the people as a god, was struck down, consumed by worms. The Roman emperors, who declared themselves divine, met tragic ends, their empires crumbling before their eyes. But this is not just a lesson for ancient kings. It is a warning for every generation, for every leader, for every person who believes that power is their right rather than a sacred trust. In a world driven by the pursuit of fame, influence, and dominance, humility is a forgotten virtue, yet it is the humble who are truly great. It is the humble who understand that whatever authority they possess is a gift, a responsibility, and ultimately a test of character. Why does God humble the proud? Because pride blinds. It blinds leaders to the needs of their people. It blinds the powerful to the cries of the weak. It blinds even the wise to their own faults, and in that blindness destruction is inevitable. The proud build their empires on foundations of arrogance, but those foundations are weak, for they lack the support of truth, justice, and righteousness. Humility, on the other hand, is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the recognition that all power is borrowed, that we are stewards, not owners. The humble leader serves rather than demands service. He listens rather than silences. He seeks wisdom rather than claiming to know all. And because of this, the humble are exalted, while the proud are brought low. The call for humility is not just for rulers, politicians, or kings. It is for all of us. In our families, our careers, our relationships, pride can become a hidden poison, turning love into dominance, cooperation into competition, and faith into self-righteousness. But when we choose humility, we open ourselves to wisdom, to growth, and to the favor of God. So let the rise and fall of the mighty serve as a reminder to every heart. Do not place your trust in your own strength, your own wisdom, or your own achievements. For all human power is like a mist, appearing for a moment and then vanishing. Instead, walk humbly, live with integrity, serve with compassion, and always remember, there is a higher authority to whom we are all accountable. Hope in divine justice, finding peace amid chaos in a world where darkness often seems to triumph. Where the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer, it is easy to become overwhelmed, disheartened, and fearful. We look around and see chaos, nations in turmoil, leaders corrupted by power, innocent lives oppressed, and truth silenced. Yet, even in the midst of such confusion, there is a light that never fades, a promise that never fails, the assurance of divine justice. This is the hope that can sustain us even when all else seems lost. Divine justice is not like human justice. It is not swayed by wealth, influence, or deception. It is not delayed by bureaucracy, nor is it corrupted by favoritism. It is perfect, unchanging, and inevitable. While human courts may falter, while leaders may abuse their authority, and while the powerful may seem untouchable, there is a higher court, an eternal throne from which true justice flows. But what is divine justice? It is truth that every deed will be accounted for, that no evil will go unpunished, and that no act of goodness will be forgotten. It is the reality that God sees all, knows all, and remembers all. Even when injustice seems to reign, God's justice is at work, often in ways unseen and at times beyond our understanding. Throughout history, we see this truth revealed. Joseph, betrayed by his brothers and unjustly imprisoned, could have despaired, but he held on to hope. In time, the very prison that seemed like his end became the pathway to his rise. The brothers who had betrayed him bowed before him, not in vengeance, but in reconciliation, a revelation of divine justice wrapped in mercy. Consider the story of Mordecai and Haman in ancient Persia. Haman, a proud and wicked official, plotted to destroy Mordecai and all his people. His schemes seemed unstoppable, his influence unshakable. But in a sudden turn of events, the very gallows he had built for Mordecai became the instrument of his own destruction. Divine justice did not just punish the wicked, it exalted the righteous, and this truth is not confined to ancient times. Even in our modern world, regimes built on corruption have fallen, leaders who oppress their people have been brought to shame, and hidden evils have been exposed in the light. These are not mere coincidences. They are glimpses of divine justice at work. But divine justice is not always immediate. Sometimes it seems delayed, and this can test our faith. We may wonder why the wicked prosper, why the innocent suffer, and why truth is silenced. Yet the delay of divine justice is not its denial. Just as a seed must take time to grow, so too must justice unfold according to God's perfect timing. For some it comes swiftly, like lightning, striking without warning. For others it is reserved for a day yet to come, but it will come. What does this mean for us? It means we must hold on to hope. When we see corruption, when we witness betrayal, when we feel overwhelmed by the darkness, we must remember that the story is not over. It means we must not be tempted to repay evil for evil or to abandon our principles in despair. Instead, we must trust in the one who judges righteously, knowing that his justice is not just retribution but restoration. And this hope should bring us peace. Peace because we know that God is in control. Peace because we understand that even when the world is shaken, his purpose remains unshaken. Peace because we believe that even in suffering, God is working all things together for good. So, when the headlines scream of chaos, when leaders fall, when the mighty are humbled, and when evil seems to reign, remember this truth: divine justice is at work. It may be hidden for a time, it may seem delayed, but it is never denied. It is the light that pierces the darkness, the hand that lifts the humble, and the judgment that corrects the proud. Let this be your strength and your comfort, that no matter how chaotic the world may appear, there is a higher order, a greater purpose, and an unchanging justice that governs all. And so we stand at a crossroads, one that is not just for nations, leaders, or kings, but for each of us. We have witnessed the rise of the proud and their sudden fall. We have seen those who boast of their power brought low, and those who walked in humility lifted high. We have seen the hand of divine justice moving quietly behind the headlines, correcting, judging, and restoring. We have been reminded that in a world where kingdoms shake and leaders are removed, there is one who never loses his throne. But the question remains, what will we do with this truth? Will we continue to place our hope in the frailty of human power, in the schemes of men, in the pride of those who boast of their greatness? Or will we choose the path of wisdom, the path of humility, the path that leads not to fleeting glory but to eternal truth? For you who hear these words, this is not just a message for the mighty. It is a call for all. You do not need a crown to be corrupted by pride. You do not need a throne to forget who holds true authority. Every heart is a kingdom, and every life a story. Who reigns upon the throne of your heart, who guides the course of your life? Is it pride or humility? Is it darkness or light? Know this: no matter how dark the world may become, there is hope. Even in times of chaos, there is a higher order. Even in the fall of the mighty, there is a divine purpose. Even in judgment, there is mercy. The rise and fall of leaders are but signs that remind us of a greater truth. There is a sovereign God who is just, who is merciful, who is faithful. So walk humbly, live righteously, and never place your trust in the shifting sands of human power. For when the storms come, when thrones are shaken, and when kingdoms fall, there is only one foundation that remains unshakable, the one who is, who was, and who is to come. Let your hope be in him. Let your strength be in his truth, and may your heart never forget that no matter what you see around you, you are part of a greater story, a story where truth will prevail, where justice will reign, and where those who humble themselves will be lifted up. This is the call, this is the truth, this is the unshakable hope.